Welcome back to another episode of Stand on Guard. I'm your host, David Creighton. Thank you so much for joining me. It's Monday, September 16th, 2024. When we come back, a little bit about what's happening in this world today.
So we are in a very precarious position in this country. We need political change, but we also need the resolve to resist.
Yes, please like the station. You've been doing a lot of that lately. I can get my head in here. I'm sorry. It's been quite a weekend. Yeah. And it helps to really beat the YouTube suppression, which you're doing. Thank you for so many people subscribing over the weekend. We're heading towards the $30,000 subscriber goal. Should be there perhaps by the end of this week if things continue as they've been going. So thank you so much. It's appreciated because the more membership we have, the more subscribers we have, the greater outreach this program succeeds in achieving. And that's the point, is to get the word out to people about what's happening. What's happening today? Parliament resumes. We're back after, 3-4 months of a Liberal Party and Trudeau government drift. They say they've been listening to Canadians. That's BS. It's balderdash crap. They haven't been listening to Canadians. They've been listening to themselves, tell themselves that they're just doing fine. They've got the formula. They've got the right programs. Canadians are happy. They don't want elections. We saw that last week from Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly, who said Canadians don't want elections. And of course, the mainstream media is pushing this agenda too by saying, oh, Canadians don't really want elections in the fall. Right. Nonsense. I don't trust the mainstream media to say anything truthful. And they just parrot the lies of the Liberal government. We're going to be watching some mainstream media in a second here. But the big story for me from the weekend was this. Michael Barrett asked Elon Musk, asking about why is the Canadian government announced a loan of $2.34 billion to help a Quebec company build a broadband satellite network that will connect more remote communities to the internet. This service already exists, called Starlink, Elon Musk's product. So Michael Barrett, conservative MP, writes a little note to Elon Musk saying, hey, Elon Musk, how much would it cost to provide Starlink to every Canadian household that doesn't have high speed? If this 2.14 billion plan is the panacea of expanding access and competition and service, where is the interest from private investors and banks? This is a complete scam. It just amazes me. Are you seeing any of this on the mainstream media? Absolutely not. What does Elon Musk respond? Less than half of that amount for Starlink. Like what? A billion? Maybe 900 million? Substantial savings. Just incredible. Who's this going to? Uh-huh. My old friend Andy Lee, who does a lot of great work on her own, discovered where it's going. Dan Goldberg, CEO of Telesat. He's at the trough. Thank you, Mark Carney, for inviting your friends into the Liberal government to just get taxpayer money. This is just so incredibly seamy. This just makes you want to wash your hands looking at it. It makes me nauseous. This is what this government is all about, giving its friends money to replicate services that are already there. And of course, who's going to benefit? Quebec. Now, would that have anything to do with appeasing the Bloc Québécois right now? Would that have anything to do with it? Providing jobs to good Quebecers because the Bloc will say, hey, we delivered for Quebec. We're not here to deliver for Canada. We're here to deliver for Quebec. And we got the Liberal government to sign a deal with a Quebec-based company so Quebec will benefit. And the Bloc can say, I guess we can support the Trudeau government in the coming non-confidence vote, which we'll discuss in a few minutes here. You know Champagne, eh? Oh, Francois Philippe Champagne, our blessed Minister of Industry. And he says, typical Polyev nonsense. They prefer giving money to foreign billionaires instead of supporting your industry and our workers. Uh-huh. Guess what, blowhard Champagne? You know this idiot as well. He's the one that stands up in question period with the whiny voice in English or French and just complains and talks the same liberal talking points about all they're doing for Canadian industry when they're doing nothing except propping up their friends. This one disgusts me because, yeah, he makes a big deal out of this. Guess what, though? Elon Musk is a Canadian. He has dual citizenship. Francois Philippe Champagne does not know that. And by the way, I know there are great Quebecers who are conservative, small c conservative, and there happens to be a leader of the People's Party of Canada named Maxime Bernier, who's from Quebec, who's got a lot of common sense ideas. And a lot of Quebecers that do have common sense ideas. But you know this is about politics. Don't be naive. They're giving this contract to a liberal friend, and they're making sure that liberal friend is in Quebec because they want to buy the support of the Bloc Québécois. And the Bloc Québécois will say, we did it. We engineered it. And they don't care if it's friends of Trudeau. They're not there for Canada. They don't care about Canadian taxpayers. Don't think for a minute. They care about where your money is going as long as they reap political dividends. And that's all this is about. So I'm not going on an anti-Quebec rant. I'm going on an anti-BQ rant, and I'm going on an anti-Friends of the Liberal Party rant. And you know what this is all about. Do you think this would go to a firm in Alberta right now? No. Not even Ontario. Certainly not Alberta. No, because the Liberal Party doesn't have very many friends there. So it wouldn't be getting any support. So this is where we're at as the House reconvenes today. And Justin Trudeau, you heard him last week saying, I can't wait to get it on with Polyev. Yeah, I can't wait. And we're going to be watching an interview shortly with Karina Gould, who is the bankrupt government House leader. This is the woman who posed proudly for photographs with the Nazi that Justin Trudeau and the Speaker of the House at the time and Karina Gould invited to speak to Parliament. About a year ago now. Remember that standing ovation? Oh, remember Karina Gould standing proudly behind him? And remember when she was revealed, when we learned that they knew who this guy was, she said, let's strike that from the record. Let's make it disappear. Let's do like George Orwell talked about in 1984 and just pretend it never happened. We'll just excise the whole piece, redact it all, just like it never happened. That's the kind of woman who says, oh, we're going to give Polyev a chance to introduce his non-confidence motion. Just you wait and see. And we'll watch that in a minute. But to me, what I just showed you from from X, reveals the deep-hearted, deep-seated corruption of this Trudeau government. And you're not seeing much of this reported in the mainstream. In fact, you're seeing none of it reported in the mainstream media. Okay. I'm glad I got that off my shoulder. Of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't say, here we go again with former President Donald Trump. I'm not going to get into all of that here. There's just too much material for this morning. But we know the guy accused of doing it, who's alive for now. We'll see if the FBI allows him to stay alive God help us if the FBI investigate this one too. That goddamn corrupt police organization, because they'll do it again. They'll cover it up. But we know from his incredible archive on social media, this guy was out there as an advocate for war with Russia. He was one of these idiots who couldn't spend enough money of your money on giving money to Ukraine for the war. He was an advocate, an acolyte of fighting the Russians, recruiting people to go fight the Russians, just desperate to start a war with Russia. This guy, even if he hadn't, I'm not pronouncing anybody guilty, but this is the chief suspect. And I think I don't think they're going to find anybody else. But it disgusts you to see. And can anybody put two and two together? This guy's obviously working for the Democrats. He's obviously working for the whole Democratic Party, the policy, and they're out to get Donald Trump. The Democratic Party wants to kill Donald Trump. And the irresponsibility with which the Democrats throw around words like Hitler, the calling Trump Hitler, equating Trump to Hitler, saying he has to be stopped, and anything, at any means, with any means possible, they say Trump has to be stopped. Well, that is just not just provocation. It is reckless, irresponsible, and criminal to be saying things like that when he's already had one assassination attempt, and this one is the second. In just over 2 months. I remember the first was July 13th. This one was September 15th. That's 2 months and 2 days after the first attempt. This is outrageous. I want to go to an interview here. I'm so sick of YouTubers saying, "Oh, we just love Vassie. She's just a wonderful journalist. She's just so dead on. And it's all crap. This is all nonsense. She's in the bag as well." And I'll prove it when we watch this interview because she just recites liberal talking points. Yeah, she asks a few tough questions. What the hell do you think her job is supposed to be? Stop being an acolyte for her. Stop being so sycophantic about some CTV journalist who actually does her job once in a while. I'm really sick of these people out there on YouTube who go, "Oh, she's just wonderful. She's just wonderful." Well, let's listen to how wonderful she is here with Karina Gould, your government house leader.
To welcome you back to the show. Thank you so much for making the time.
Thanks for having me, Bashi.
Last week I was covering your cabinet in Halifax, the retreat in Halifax, and I remember very distinctly you said at the time you were confident, that's a quote, that your agreement with the NDP was a good and strong one, and quote, "we'll get to the end of June." Do I assume from those comments you did not see this coming?
That is correct. I'm quite surprised today.
So tell me a little bit more about that. How did you find out? And I'm asking, like, not many Canadians would know this, but you would have a more, a closer relationship with your counterpart in the NDP than, for example, a lot of other people who have roles in government or in cabinet. Was this never conveyed to you throughout the summer?
No, not once. No, I mean, I was very, honest and clear and confident last week because as far as I'm concerned, we've had a very productive working relationship over the last 3 years and have been able to deliver quite substantial programs for Canadians. Of course, there's always points of... I'm
sorry, I got the... I have got the wrong interview here. I'm going to have to find the other one. Just hold on, folks. I won't disappoint you. Here we go. Sorry about that.
Off by actually just getting you on the record about something that New Democrats and Conservatives are saying behind the scene. They're saying that the possibility of your government proroguing Parliament is there, particularly if you do suffer a by-election loss on Monday. in Montreal. Can you
Technical
say yes or
details.
no? Are you planning on being there for the entire fall sitting?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to being there on Monday and working with the opposition parties in whatever configuration that looks like.
Okay, just to get things back on stream here. My apologies. We had a technical difficulty there. That she's talking about not proroguing. There's been a lot of talk about Trudeau proroguing. He's not going to prorogue Parliament because he wants the Online Harms Act. She's not going to say that, but that's why they won't prorogue Parliament. They want this legislation to pass, and if they prorogue, everything goes back to step one.
To deliver on important pieces of legislation for Canadians.
Our audience will have just heard, and you know well now by now, that over the last week, the Conservatives have said at the earliest possible opportunity, they'd like to force a vote of confidence on your government, which likely would be an opposition day motion that they could then introduce in that fashion. Do you plan to allot them one of those days before the end of the month?
Oh, well, look, there are 11 and a half sitting weeks in the fall session. There are 7 opposition days. Of course, the Conservatives are going to get their opposition days. It's not usual practice that we do it the first week back in any session, but I can say with confidence that they will be getting an off day, fairly soon.
How has your government changed its behavior over the last 2 months?
Well, look, I think one of the very first things that we did is we spent the summer listening to Canadians. And, this past week in Nanaimo, that's what we talked about as caucus members, what we were hearing from people on the ground in our communities and, really reflecting on how we.
Who do you think they're talking to? Like their immediate circle of friends and their family. That's what they say constitutes talking to Canadians. These people don't give a damn what you think. They don't ask you. They don't really care if you think we should have an election. They don't think we need an election, and they think really they're doing just fine.
Respond in the fall this session. This first week we're going to be, debating legislation like Lost Canadians, like military justice reform, like supply chains, all important pieces of legislation. But it's also about, I think, really demonstrating to Canadians that we've heard them and take their concerns seriously, and that we hear them and we're responding to what their needs are.
Can I deduce from that, though, Minister, that there are going to be any new programs or policies that will address the issues that you and your ministerial colleagues laid out? You are still very much hearing at the door, be it around affordability, the cost of living, a crisis that Canadians very much feel they are in. Because so far over the summer, you've given no indication, right through the caucus retreat, that there will be anything new. It's just more of the same programming, contrasted with the accusation that you've leveled against the Conservatives that the Tories will take that programming away.
Well, yeah, so in some regards, yes, it's more of what we have already been doing because we know that those things are working. But at the same time, what we've been also thinking about over the summer is.
No, those things are not working. They make the assumption these things are working because the Canadians they talked to all summer told them so.
Are there new ideas? Are there new policies? Are there new things that we need to be doing? I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but that's very much what being in government is about. It's about delivering on the things that matter for Canadians, but also being able to pivot and present new ideas that are going to be meaningful for Canadians.
Do you concede that those new things are necessary, though, because the programs that you contend are delivering so fruitfully for Canadians? Canadians do not perceive them to be. And I'm going to put a few examples to you. GDP per capita is down over the last 5 quarters. You and, again, your ministerial colleagues keep telling us about how the macro picture is very different. And it's true that GDP overall is set to increase in 2025. I think the IMF says at the second highest level in the entire G7. But at a per capita basis, it is an incredibly different story, which is part of the reason why Canadians are not feeling the message that you're putting out there.
See, once again, she's scratching at the surface here. We talked over the weekend and we showed you slides about how Canada is really doing fiscally. It's not number 2, Vassy. No, we're last. The Liberals are lying about this whole thing. And it's not just the macroeconomics. Look, she finally admits microeconomics here. Yes, Canadians are suffering. Macroeconomics, we're suffering too. We're last, but you won't hear that.
Statistic this week that really stuck out to, I know, many Canadians across the country. Just over 1 million people visited a food bank in Ontario over the past year. Is it fair of your government to keep contending that what you are doing is delivering for Canadians, so you keep on delivering? Do you not concede that a whole lot more is necessary to meet Canadians in the crisis moment they're in?
Yeah, I do think there's more that we need to do. But I think if in absence of those programs and the absence of those policies, things would be a lot worse. I think
How would they be worse? In absence of what policies? What are you doing to improve my life? You're stealing money from me in huge taxes. You're making life impossible. 43% of my income goes to taxes because of you. What are you doing for Canadians? You keep talking about, oh, we're doing these programs. What programs? Dental care is not a program. It's not working for anybody except a very small proportion of the population. And even if it did, it's the government interfering in our lives, taking money from one hand, giving a little bit back.
the really important difference here is that, what the Conservatives are putting forward is not to do those things, which would actually make it a lot harder for Canadians right across this country to have to face things like inflation, to have to face things, in terms of the global economic challenges and headwinds that every country in the world is.
You see how ass backward this is? The Conservatives would make it harder to deal with inflation. But you are the ones who created the inflation.
Is facing. So I think there is more to do. That's exactly, why we continue to be thinking creatively on how we can deliver effective policies and programs that are going to make a difference in the lives of Canadians. But those programs and policies that we have put in place are really important to, support Canadians today.
One of those interventions or programs, however, keeps losing popularity. I'm thinking specifically of the consumer portion of the carbon tax. This week, two of your closest allies on the fight against climate change, Jagmeet Singh at the federal NDP and Premier David Eby, an NDP premier in BC, essentially rejected that consumer carbon tax is a sound policy and one that they would continue to implement, even in Premier Eby's case, if your backstop were to be removed. This is not like a conspiracy theory question. Climate change is real. It's an existential threat.
Okay, the next time I hear about wonderful Bassie and how she just, asks the toughest questions, here she is parroting the Liberal Party talking point about climate change being an existential threat. In other words, that means she believes the world's going to end in 10 years unless we adopt her Liberal policies. So this is absolute balderdash. And of course she's saying it because that's the Liberal talking point and that's the CTV talking point. And how many of you out there believe it? You know this is nonsense. You know this is a scam to collect tax dollars. And this just incredible how this is how a journalist, so-called journalist, has to talk to the Liberal House leader. We don't believe in conspiracy theories here, meaning we don't believe in questioning your Liberal Party talking points. So don't tell me again about how tough this journalist is, because people who say that aren't journalists. They don't know what a journalist is supposed to do. You're supposed to ask tough questions of every political party.
Don't the actions your government take to fight it need collective buy-in? Why are you so rigidly wedded to this one portion of your suite of policies when it has proven to be so incredibly unpopular that even your one provincial ally, David Eby, no longer wants it?
I mean, it's really interesting from Premier Eby's point of view, considering that BC was the very first province to bring in a price on pollution, and actually the federal backstop doesn't actually apply to British Columbia. So let's recall
But doesn't that show you how deeply unpopular it is that he felt he had to come out and say what would happen?
Yeah, it's certainly interesting for sure, but I think also what it states is that there's
no big deal. So CTV News has finally caught up with the fact that most Canadians hate the carbon tax. Most Canadians resent the carbon tax. And they asked a question to a minister about why are you people still shoving this carbon tax down our throats when we don't want it? But watch Karina Gould. Oh, it's because we believe in it. And we believe in it, you must
Only
too.
one political party in this country that is, firmly committed to fighting climate change, and that's the Liberal Party of Canada. I think it's really interesting on Mr. Singh's part. This is the second time in as many weeks that he has kind of capitulated to the demands of Pierre Poilievre. First, Mr. Poilievre asks him to back out of SACA. Mr. Singh says, sure. The next thing Mr. Poilievre says was, don't back the price on pollution. Mr. Singh says, okay, no problem. So, I think it's really interesting that Mr. Singh is trying to position himself as someone who can stand up to Mr. Poilievre, but says, when Mr. Poilievre says jump, he just says how high. But
respectfully, Minister, my question's not about Mr. Singh or the
existential,
Conservatives. I have
but it
the
is an
NDP.
existential problem, right? And it's
It is,
something
but
that we have to do and fight. And, I think what it comes down to at the end of the day is what are the alternatives that are being positioned in order to actually bring those greenhouse gas emissions down and in order.
And this is all nonsense because it's not bringing greenhouse gas emissions down because you still are driving the same amount. You're still heating your home the same amount in the winter, hopefully, unless you're freezing. You're still using the air conditioning in the summer. I did all summer, but you're just being taxed more on it. It's not bringing emissions down. This is a lunatic proposal, and it's a lunatic policy that doesn't work except to penalize people. This is all about penalizing people and then pretending you're giving them money. Oh, it's a rebate. Yeah, it's the government handing you free money every quarter. And don't and just believe the government when it says 80% of Canadians are getting more back in your stupid rebate than they're actually spending on the carbon tax. And we know it's a lie.
To actually make sure that we are building an economy of the 21st century that is either low or no carbon, and is creating those good green jobs and is making.
There are no good green jobs. We've said that 100 times. They're janitorial positions. They're building the economy of the 15th century. That's what they're building because they're going to bring us back to a pre industrial age where we're all going to be living in caves and freezing. That's what they're building.
Sure that we have a planet for our kids and grandkids to grow into.
I don't know that Premier Eby is saying
ridiculous.
let's not have a planet for our kids to grow into, or Jagmeet Singh is saying anything like that. And I think even the lack of a climate plan from other parties deserves questioning, but it doesn't absolve your government of culpability around a policy now that has become so deeply unpopular that it seems you're not willing to give no matter what. It's 9%. That's what the Canadian Climate Institute said of the total reductions by 2030. That's not even close to the majority of what will reduce emissions. Why not stop for a moment, recognize how deeply unpopular it has become, and
at least she recognized that it's a useless tax. It's not even achieving the result. It's not getting the emissions down. Finally, somebody in the mainstream media at least said that.
do something different if it gets you to the ultimate goal that your government wants to achieve, to meet those climate change mitigation targets. Like, I don't understand the rigidity. I just don't get it.
Well, it's part of a broader plan when it comes to fighting climate change. I mean, there's many different pieces to what we're doing, and the price on pollution is one of those pieces about changing consumer behavior. And recall that it also comes with the carbon rebate. So it means that, folks.
See, she's gulping down her breath here because she knows she's lying. There's no plan here. This is not part of a bigger solution. This is just a scam, and it always has been. And if she's honest for a moment with herself, which I doubt she can be as a Liberal cabinet minister, it's impossible to be honest and occupy that position.
Across this country are getting quarterly checks from the government of Canada, where the provincial government has decided not to have their own price on pollution. But it is, and it has been said by economists in Canada and around the world, that this is one of the most effective ways for us to fight climate change.
Just to be clear, you'd never change that one component if ultimately you could still get to the same end goal.
Well, it's part of that broad suite of policies, and it's one of those things that we've tried to make it as cost neutral for individuals as possible, so that
broad suite of policies. cost neutral. It's just a lot of blather. She's spouting talking points that mean absolutely nothing.
They get that money returned to them. So, because we don't want to send it to provinces that aren't going to use it for ways to reduce pollution.
It's not carbon is not a pollution. How about actually trying to reduce real pollution? These dunderheads can't even define pollution. They just keep repeating their own insanity. This woman should have a bag over her head because she's a disgrace to the House of Commons for what she's done in the past by inviting former members of the Waffen SS to speak to Parliament and then advocating that it all be excised from history.
But at the end of the day, it's going to take all of us as a country to be able to meet our climate objectives and to really be able to protect our planet.
Okay, I'm out of time, Minister. I got to leave it.
And you're out of time too, Minister. The clock is running out on all of these Liberals. We're back today. What I didn't mention at the beginning of the show, by-election. And if I can find the time to come on tonight, I will be coming on to talk about what that means. We have got a huge by-election today in Winnipeg and Montreal. The Liberals are probably going to lose both, but if they lose the one in Montreal, it'll be another nail in the coffin of Justin Trudeau's political future. But he's already said, "Hey, I'm not going anywhere." But other people might have something to say about that. So stay tuned today, folks. This is a big day. Parliament resumes, 2 by-elections. We have the continuing fallout from I believe, the Democratic Party assault on Donald Trump, another attempted assassination. There is so much going on right now. And we are inching closer to a nuclear war with Russia, thanks to the reckless abandon of democratic policies in the States and liberal policies in Canada. These are exciting times, but they're incredibly dangerous times. Be aware. Be wary. Keep watching this show. And I'll be back again tomorrow and maybe tonight. I can't promise you, but I'm going to do my best after my shift with the post millennial, where I spend most of my afternoons now. I'll be back tonight to talk about what this by-election, what happened, and what it means for you.